Hey guys, it's Seth. It's 5 questions for Seth Shostrom. This time it's Penance Edition. One of my favorite books that I've written. I know we're supposed to have favorites. I've actually written a couple more since that are favorite, if that makes sense. But the good news is I'm growing as a writer, so hopefully I do like my books more and more as I get moving on. With that, as usual, we kick off with an elevator pitch for Penance. So I'll dig into that. So Penance is an interesting story. It's about an FBI agent, top of his game, top of his class, on the precipice of getting a promotion. In fact, he'll be one of the youngest deputy directors in DC. The eve of his promotion, he's celebrating and meets a young lady, and let's just say he makes a moral judgment error in that event. The lady happens to be the girlfriend of a very, very powerful senator who ends up having Penance blackballed, Special Agent Alex Penance, and instead of getting his promotion to DC, he gets basically exiled to this forgotten little outpost in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi. Clearly not happy about this. Ends up in this little town, really only existed in response to both positive and negative civil rights things, and they just never felt right pulling the plug on it, so the office just kind of languished on. So he's in this exiled FBI office in middle of nowhere swamp country of Mississippi, and he wants nothing more than to hate the town and hate the people in it and muddle through life and try to find his way out. In the course of that, he gets thrown into this case of some missing girls, and the missing girls end up being linked to this cartel that's both doing drugs and sex trafficking, and he gets embroiled into this mission. He's very bold, very forceful FBI agent, ends up just ripping the lieutenant from the cartel out, throws him in the county jail while he's in process to go to federal. The cartel didn't really take kindly on that. So in response, they actually wage war on this little town. And before help can get there, Agent Penance has to rally civilians in the town, basically, to help thwart this cartel. Now, in the midst of all this, there's a couple of people that genuinely impact Agent Penance. First off is his first friend, Officer Bubba Jeffries. Not what you would think of as Penance's friend, but he just worms his way into the agent's heart and becomes a big factor in his transformation. Another is, of course, Annie Hunt, the very attractive assistant district attorney that he gets paired with. And let's say he's got a certain course with her, and then meets a pastor, Pastor Roberts, who also gets into Penance's heart a little bit as he grows in this town. And that's really what Penance is all about. The name was on purpose. He's there to find a new way, to transform from some of the moral flaws he's had in life and grow out of it as an individual and as an agent. So we'll dive into the questions. What inspired me to write Penance? Great question. When I first did the outline and brief synopsis for Penance, I was probably in somewhat of a darker place in my life, I guess. I don't know. I'm pretty happy-go-lucky, so I'm not sure what that place was. But there's just a little edginess to me, at least in formation of the outline for Penance. Interestingly enough, that edginess kind of put me off for a while, and I kind of buried it. And I went on to other projects. I started traveling a lot for work again, and it took me a lot to the Southeast. And I would do these colossal mega work road trips where I would land in Florida and drive all the way up to North Carolina and loop back around through Tennessee and Georgia and Alabama, or go the other way around. And in that, I drove through some amazing small towns, and the flavor was just so cool. I loved driving through and stopping, whether it was just to get gas or a bite to eat or, whatever it was. And I started thinking about Penance again and getting myself in the setting and in the mood. So I was able to kind of complete this this little story of Penance and his journey. Second question is about flawed characters. In this case, it's a morally flawed character. Everybody's flappable, right? Everybody's got issues. When I started writing Penance, it's the first really morally flawed character that I started writing, at least as a protagonist. And honestly, it bugged me. It bugged me so much that was part of the reason why I canned it for a long time. Strangely enough, I was actually sitting in church, looking across from my pastor, thinking about my books, thinking about Penance in particular, especially the way it started. And I'm like, I can't imagine Pastor Dave reading this book. So an epiphany happened in that setting. It's like, whoa, hang on. This isn't a story about his flaws. This is a story about him overcoming his flaws. So that kind of was a rebirth for me in the writing of Penance, and I thoroughly loved the book once I had that right mindset, and really became one of my favorites as we went on. So it was a joy to write, and I'd still love reading it. Next question is about characters. We talked a little bit about the protagonist. Let's talk a little bit about side characters. In Penance, and a lot of my books, I throw in a lot of characters. For some folks, it can almost be mildly overwhelming, but that's how life is, right? There's so many people around us, so many people that can impact us in certain ways. And in Penance, probably more so than any other book that I wrote, that these other characters, the non-main character, at least non-protagonist, had massive impact on the book and on Penance and his journey. So I just start thinking about people, people that you would think would be in that scenario, people that you might think would be a little atypical of that scenario, and try to play them together and just make puzzles out of them, and try to find ways that they can be both encouraging, people maybe grabbing his ankles, trying to keep him down a little bit, whatever the case may be. They became very key to his heart. One of the side characters I loved was his neighbor, and you guys got to read Penance to find that part out. The whole side story about him dealing with his neighbors, that again, just like the town, just like his experience, he didn't want to like them, but life happens, and you start to get to know people for who they are. One fun thing I really got to do in this, in the heat of chaos, I don't want to give parts of the book away, but there's I'll throw it out there. There's a white gentleman and a black gentleman, and they didn't get along in high school, and race was part of their issues. And here they are working side by side. They have their own epiphanies. They have their own light bulbs that go off, and they're like, why? Why would we have those feelings? It's kind of stupid in the scheme of things. And they turn out to be friends. But I'll let you read the book and get more to that. But it's really fun to be able to do that with the stories that you create and the characters that you create. Next. Series, writing a series. So I don't always know my books are going to be a series. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Penance was one of those that if I completed it, I had intended to be one and done. But quite frankly, halfway through, once I got the vibe of what I want to do and I started enjoying the story more, there is no way that this cast of characters and this story, this character story was going to be over in that moment. And frankly, as I started writing it, there was so much more of his journey that I knew this guy had to go through. It was going to be a series. So Penance is definitely one of those that feeds into a series. Blood in the Snow, when I wrote that book, that was my first book. That was almost from the day one intended to be a series pretty quickly. Those are characters I wanted to develop and grow, and relationships grow and mature over time. Dark Chase set up to be a series as well. And then my upcoming Patriot X will be as well. Most of my romances and holiday novels, maybe not so much. Those are more one and dones. It seems to be most of my thrillers seem to, whether I mean for it in the beginning or not, take a life of their own and continue on in the form of a series. Actually, a great lead into the question for writers, because there's some writers that follow these videos and stick with me on social media. The question about story arcs, and it's not just stories; it's character arcs and all that. So an arc is really, it's the path, the journey you want characters and storylines to go through. And for me, it is divided into different pieces. I think there's a character arc, and the character arcs can be broken up. So I think you might have a series character arc, But then in each book, there's a bit of an arc for that character as well. And within the books, there's an overall arc of the storyline. So from start to finish, it's got to follow this path and travel through all those experiences to get to the end result. Same thing with the series. There's generally an overlying arc that I want to get to from book one to the final pages of the final book. But in between, how unfun would it be if you didn't get some resolutions from close of book to close of book? So there's always these mini arcs that help the overall story get to the final finish. Blood in the Snow series, the Sean Kendall series, is a great example of that. It's not only character journey, it's not only characters together's journey, but there's always resolution to pieces in each book, but then there's this overarching bad guy piece that continues on from the first book to the final book. So that's it. I look forward to launching one of these on my next book. There's a couple holiday books coming up, so look for me there. As always, if you haven't picked up Penance yet, do. Of course, you can get it from my website or from bookshop.org or Amazon. If you can, get it from your local bookshop. Especially in today's economy, they need the help. Independents need to stay alive. They're going to stay alive by us, being good stewards in our community by purchasing from them, whether it's the local restaurant, bookshop, what have you. So in my case, selling books. If you can buy the book from your local bookstore, do it. I implore you. With that, I'll catch you on the next one. Take care, guys.